Have you ever asked yourself the question, how much profit is enough? When can I afford to put somebody on? And what is my sales qualification system that I need to grow my business? On today's episode, I'm going to share with you what I do to take care of all of that. Enjoy.
How old are you going to be before you start to experience life like you want it? I want to tell you right now, whether you like it or not, there is a better way to do business.
Hi everyone, welcome to the Business for Builders podcast. My name's Max, I am your host, a humble general contractor, business coach and purebred entrepreneur. Good to have you in the house today. Welcome to you if you are in YouTube land, and welcome to you if you're checking us out on the podcast. Look, if you've been around for a while, I appreciate you coming back. And if this is your first time, I appreciate you checking us out. So it's good to be back. Look, I think today when I was preparing, it was just a different level of urgency because obviously, for me, I love the numbers because it confirms both the good of the business and the bad of the business. And so really today it's just about, I guess, transferring some of that urgency that I wake up with when I start thinking about my business to you. And maybe it's just an awareness thing. You're like, wow, I never even thought about it that way. Hopefully there's going to be some education here where you kind of know what you should be looking at as far as knowing your numbers. And all of a sudden now there's a level of education that's got to be absorbed. So no matter, and maybe you know this and you know this and you know this and you've seen it before, but you just need that kick up the arse. So maybe that's you. So you'll probably fit into one of those categories. The only other category you might fit in is like, I don't even want to hear that. I'm doing okay. Flick to the next episode or what have you. So wherever you're up to, I trust that this next few minutes together will help you, get things sorted out within your business. So like and subscribe, all that kind of good stuff. If you want to email me, max@elitebusinessadvisory.com. If you want to book a complimentary coaching session, we can just talk about some strategies and some tactics, chat about your business. Feel free to jump into the elitebusinessadvisory.com and book a consultation. Big yellow button there, and I'm happy to invest 30 minutes of my time in you and your business and your future. And the other thing while I've got you, and I think I banged on about this a little bit last episode, was about the elitebusinessadvisory.com/academy. If you want to know whether or not coaching suits you and more education or self-development is going to be good for you, whether you can do it, jump into that academy for $65 US per month. It'll tell you whether or not you've got the commitment to learn and grow. Okay, before you come and talk to me about business coaching, which is a significant investment per year, but a very worthy one, because when I talk to some of my existing clients and we look at the revenue increases and the systemization and the improvements that we've made to them and their business, it's worth the investment, okay? So there's some serious ROI, but it is a bit of a challenge to get started. So All right, so today, markup, margin, and knowing your numbers. Look, I think what we've got to understand first is markup versus margin. I'm just going to do this versus margin, okay? Now, the difference is, because they're not the same thing, so let's get that straight. Now, I've got clients past and present that we have a bit of a joke around this, because essentially we're talking about a markup percentage and a margin percentage. And what we've got to understand is that the markup is the, how am I going to do this without confusing you guys and gals? This is the action, okay? This is the result or the outcome. Now, people say to me, well, Max, I'm only interested in this, the markup percentage, because that tells me how much I'm going to make, which is right. However, when it comes to things like calculating what your break-even point is, we need to know what your profit margin percentage is, which is where this now comes in. What is the result? What is the percentage as it relates to putting the markup percentage on? What is the margin percentage so that I can work out what we'd call my break-even point? I'm going to cover that off, I think, in the next couple of episodes anyway. Markup is what you add, margin is what you keep, okay? If you confuse those two parts, okay, what it will do, because of your lack of understanding or lack of clarity, what it will do is it will quietly destroy your profitability, okay? So if you don't get it, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. You need to know this. And the concept one day will just drop. I've had clients that have taken 12 months to get, okay? They're just like, why we got 2 percentages? Why? Fight. And then for whatever reason, whether it's they see it on the software and they see the markup and the margin, and then they understand the margins needed to calculate your break-even point, and they're like, okay, I see the relevance. Rather than fighting it, if you don't understand it, don't just throw it out, okay? There's something there that you need to understand, so get clarity on that. Okay, pricing without understanding margin leads to you being busy but not profitable, okay? Because I've had guys say to me, well, Max, I'm marking up by 25%, so there's my profit margin. If you mark up by 25%, it will create for you a 20% profit margin. So the markup, okay, is 25%, but your profit margin. And I was sitting with a guy the other day, not involved in the construction industry, as he was a marketer, and he was talking about, wanting to talk to people about the return on investment as far as marketing goes. And he just said, I want to understand the business. Now, I just happened to be running a meeting prior to that with another business associate and my business partner. And so I had my laptop, this one right here, and I was actually able to bring out our activity key metrics for Smith & Sons Cold Stream. And I was able to explain to him the difference between your markup percentage and your profit margin percentage, and why it's important that you do both. And I was trying to explain it to him like this. Well, this is your cost of goods sold, and you add 25%, and then that sale price to cost of goods sold, that creates the profit in there, and that's a percentage of the overall. So he's like, dude, can you just write that down for me? So again, I had a notebook there and I did write it out. So, it's as easy as this. If you had $100 cost of goods sold, and then you added 25% to that, you now have a sale price of 125. So that's your sale price. What you've got is you've got a profit margin in dollars that's $25, and then $25 as a percentage of sale price equals 20%. 20% profit margin. So get that concept straight, okay? When you've got that, you're on your way. Next thing, fixed expense ratio. Percentage we'll call it. You've got to have some way of figuring out when am I top heavy. I've coached enough builders, whether it was in the franchise world or whether it was directly in the private world with clients that I've got from the UK to Western Australia. When we talk about the strategic planning of the business, one of the things we go to is the org chart. Okay, and so we want to really look at what is it that you're currently spending on humans, and what are you currently spending on running costs for the business? So that all makes up your expenses. Now, if you've got carpenters on payroll, they're in the field, so long as your cost of goods sold line item for carpentry covers those guys' labor, they don't bleed in across to your fixed expenses. But if the work slows down, they've got nothing to do, they now become a fixed expense, okay? So the fixed expense ratio that we lean on is about 15% of revenue. So when guys say to me, this is a classic, oh, Max, I've got good guys, I don't want to fire them. And I'm like, mate, you're running a fixed expense ratio of 25%, something has got to go. Now, labor is the quickest way to reduce your fixed expenses, okay, on a monthly basis, okay? So, because what happens is the fixed expense determines how much revenue you must generate to breathe, which goes back to the break-even point, okay? So if you're too top heavy with labor, if you know that your fixed expense is at 25% or 23%, not 15 to 18 max, right? Then what you're going to find is that you're spending too much money on operating expenses, and therefore you're not able to breathe financially because it's getting gobbled up. Like, you've got to keep feeding that monster. Because essentially when we calculate your fixed expense based on your profit margin percentage and we come up with the break-even point, it might say to you that you've got to generate $100,000 in billables just to break even per month. Now, if you're monitoring your activity on your activity key metrics like I do, then you'll start to see trends where you go, hit that month I was 110. So I made a little bit, maybe I made a 10% net that month, projected, over the course of 12 months. But then the next month you drop down to 90, that means you're running in deficit now. So the third month is critical because now I'll establish a trend. Either the trend is up or the trend is going down, okay? If your overheads are too high, growth increases your stress. It doesn't increase your profit margin. So if we're trying to grow your business and you're fixed, this is what I find amazing too. Guys tell me they want to grow a business and then I say, you've got to cut your fixed expenses. And they go, Max, you don't understand. I can't do that. Well, how do you want me to help you grow a business? Because all I'm going to do is grow your stress. You're actually going to take money that you haven't really got to spare and you're going to spend it on growth mechanisms when I can tell you straight away that you shouldn't do that because your fixed expenses are at 22%. Do the math right now. Forgetting about your carpenters or the guys that are a cost of goods sold. I trust you understand the difference between cost of goods sold and an indirect or an offsite cost. Okay, if you don't know that, please Google that, figure it out. Okay, if you can calculate what your profit margin percentage is, okay, let's say it's 20%. What you need to do is take that dollar amount that cost your wage, and it can't be 20 grand a year. Your wage has got to be what you would pay me to come in and do your job, okay? So it's got to be reasonable. So you take your wage, all the running costs, all the subscriptions, the fuel bills, the subscriptions, all the other leases you've got on equipment, everything like that. You bundle that up and go, right, it's $20,000 a month, or it's 30, or it's 50, or it's 10, whatever the case is. And you go, on average, my profit margin is 20%. All right. So what you'll do is you'll take that fixed expense dollar amount and you'll divide it by, say, 0.20. And that you'll find, and this will give you a heart attack. Email me if you get a heart attack. If you go, Max, after you talked about that, it got me curious and I thought, I wonder, A, what my fixed expenses are. And just by the way, if I sit down with you and you can't tell me what your fixed expenses are, mate, you are in big trouble. Secondary, if you can't tell me what your profit margin is on average, we got problems. Those two metrics straight away, if you don't have an understanding of those, your business is doomed, okay? You know why? Because the speed of the leader determines the speed of the pack. Don't argue, just do what you're told, please. Help me help you get a better business. That's what I'm here for, right? Fixed expense, divide that by 0.2, and that will give you it'll give you probably a large 5-figure number, or at least, or it'll definitely get you into the 6 figures per month. Then you start realizing that me paying these people, I've got to continue to make sales at this level. So it's easy like this. It's like you just take that percentage margin or that percentage and you'll calculate that as a percentage of your revenue, and it shouldn't end up as your fixed expense number. It's weird how that math works out. So anyway, we're going to cover that one other time here. Monitoring the ratio keeps expansion realistic and controlled. So why do I want to build a $10 million business? Would I be happy at 3 million or 5 million? Probably. But why is it when you're talking to mountain climbers, you go, why would you want to climb Mount Everest? And their answer is because it's there. Well, for me, being so long in the tooth, I'm just like, you know what? I could probably build we'd build a $3 million business, no problem. Could I build a $5 million business? Definitely. Why do I want to build a $10 million business? Because it seems like it's a pretty special summit to climb. And so for you and I, we're at different levels and different stages, and we have different reasons why. But no matter whether you want to build $1 million business, or 3 or 5 or 10, if you want to make sure that your expansion goals or expansion activity is realistic, then you've got to make sure that you control the fixed expenses, okay? Right, next thing. Now, net profit. Here's another one. Let's talk about net profit. If you make 3% or less, you're just running a job. That equals a job. Okay, you're not building a business, you're financing or funding or operating a hobby, okay? Because really at 3%, it's not enough certainly to justify an expansion, that's for sure. I mean, if you're at $10 million and you're doing those numbers, you will enjoy an economy of scale that says, all right, at 10 million, I could probably get away with a 6 to 7% net profit, okay? But if you are running anything below that, then what you're going to want to focus on, as far as the net profit's concerned, is 10%. In the next couple of episodes, I'm going to be talking about what we call the profitable pricing system, where we focus on net profit. We make sure that all of our line items cover off, including our business operation, to make sure that when we price jobs, we make sure that we are going to be able to look after a net profit, but also it's going to sustain the expansion of the business because we can calculate in 6 months what the business is going to cost me to run if I was to bring on more team. So I've got to start pricing accordingly. Okay, so we'll cover that off later. Revenue is an ego or a vanity metric. Okay, so people say, I do $1 million a year, 2 million, 5 million, 10 million. But if you're doing, $10 million a year and you're not making any money, and you're spending more money than you're making, then the revenue number is irrelevant. Now, what we want to do is have the revenue number as a target, but we want to make sure that we understand what our net profit's going to be. Because if we can get a net profit of 10% of our revenue after all of our expenses, including our wages were paid, then we pay tax on that. In Canada, I think the corporate tax rate's about 11%. On 100 grand, we'd pay 11%. And then we would have net retained earnings. So then if you're like us and you've got a hard deck in the company where X amount of money stays in there to cover monthly costs for say 3 months, anything over and above that can be distributed to shareholders as far as dividends go. So that's the goal, right? Net profit is the goal. 10% net profit is the goal if you're doing anything under say 8 or 9 million a year. If you're not consistently producing net profit, you're not building a business, you're financing a hobby. And really the net profit funds, we would, since we're only about, at that stage we'll be 2 years old, but we would be hesitant to actually pull everything over and above 3 or 4 months worth of operating expenses. We'd be hesitant to pull that out of the company just because our position is a little fragile as far as we're not completely happy with the momentum that we've got. We're shooting this in the month of February. And so, our year end is in May. So we've got a couple of things, we've probably got another $1.5 million in the pipeline right now that could go to contract in the next 30 days. It would be nice to get that underway because that would create certainty for us as we blow through May. And then we really get comfortable in going, okay, we're happy to distribute that to shareholders because the company has got a head of steam up even before year end. So then, whereas if it doesn't come through, our decision making will definitely change. Okay, so net profit, fund stability, reinvestment, and long-term growth. And so that's where, the more that you can stack in there, and you might, instead of having a hard deck of 3 months worth of expenses, you might say, look, if I can get 100 grand in there at the end of every financial year and still pay myself, a good income plus a really good dividend, then you might say your hard deck is 75, 80,000, depending on the size of your business. Remember, 3 times your operating expenses. So if it was 20 grand a month to run it, that would be 60 grand. So that's your hard deck, right? We don't gut the business for any less than that because we need to make sure that we can carry ourselves through maybe those little valley times where it gets a little bit dry, or perhaps Christmas, things like that. So what you want to run, so for us, if we've got this 10% and this is our goal, what we want to do is run what I call a profit nurture initiative, right? Because it's important that you think about this, because if you do not, you'll get to the back end of the year and you're like, oh, we never make any money. And then what happens is you start blaming third parties, the industry and the interest rates and the government and blah, blah, blah. We're in this town and we will probably we'll do over $2 million worth of contracts. And that's a standing start in a town of 40,000. We kicked the business off in June 2024. So June 2025 came and went. We did $100,000 in sales. And then 6 months later, we signed a contract for over $1 million. And we've got another big one coming through. And we've got another medium to small one coming through as well. But I know what I do in the way of sales, and I know what Jed does in the way of construction, and I know what our third-party support network looks like as far as accountants and bookkeepers and lawyers and things like that, to make sure that that thing is tied nice and tight. Now, that brings me back to this profit nurture initiative. Everything we do, every decision we make is always focused on, let's say, $100,000 worth of net profit, okay? Because we know that that has been set up at the beginning of the job. We know we've got all of our cost of goods sold, hopefully. We know that we've got an allocation on that job for our company to run that business for the duration of that project. So that being the case, we are always in profit nurture. We're always focused on that profit nurture campaign or initiative, because what the goal is not, even though it is net profit at the end of the financial year, the way we get that at the end of the financial year is how we do it per job. So every job has got a net profit already stacked. 10% of that contract value is going to give me X, Y, Z. So anytime we get a blowout in cost, we know we've compromised our net profit. It is what it is, shit happens. However, some cases we finish either ahead of time or under budget. What that does is that now increases the net profit. Mazel tov, great. Okay, so this is why you've got to have a focus on preserving, nurturing, looking after the net profit all the way through the year, not just getting to the back end and go, did we make a 10% net profit? Okay, right, let's wrap up. Number 4, and if you've got any questions about this, I think Elite Business Advisory, can't tell you what the number is, but Elite Business Advisory has a WhatsApp number. So if you want, shoot me a message on WhatsApp, okay? EliteBusinessAdvisory.com. The number is up there. I think it's a 604 number. Go and check that out. And if you want to hit me up with a question, do so using WhatsApp. Okay, so number 4, sales quality system. That's all I'm going to write. Whoops. Sales quality system, right? This is how, when we talk about, we're creating the profit with a markup. We're making sure that our fixed expenses are where they should be, e.g. 15% revenue, okay? Good for you, tick that box. So if you've got a healthy markup that's creating a healthy profit margin percentage, you've got good ratios on your fixed expenses, and you've got this 10% net profit goal that you are doing reasonably well at getting to, really where that's gonna start, it's funny, we start with the end result in mind. Okay, really the sales part of it, we have this saying that sales kills everything. I've heard Grant Cardone say that. Sales kills everything. However, if you're selling with a really bad markup percentage, you're not going to achieve a 10%. If you're only achieving 3%, you're going out the back door. So when it all boils down to it, and if you're not pricing jobs right, your overheads are going to automatically be too large as a percentage. See, so now when we think about it, the sales qualification system, this is why sales kills everything. And the reason is, I've done both. I've done both as far as I've gone to clients and I've anchored the price high. Okay, so I've taken their breath away. If you listen to Alex Hormozy, he said if your first price doesn't take their breath away, you're not doing your job as a sales guy. Okay, so if you've done the opposite and you've started out low, I know that I've got one in the cooker right now where I think I may have rushed into running a few numbers and we come up with a 6-figured number that I look at it and go, boy, oh boy, I certainly hope I wasn't too low, because when the client says to you, that's less than what I thought it would be, you know you haven't anchored the price, okay? So take it from me, although we are about to move into pre-construction. So, there's some positivity around that, but we really got to dig down and figure out what the final price is going to be through getting bid requests and quotes, etc. But I anchored the price too low. Now, is it easier to come down than go up? Absolutely. Because once I put everything together and I'm confident in how long the job's going to take us and what my company's going to need to receive to manage that job with all of its staff and overheads, and we've got an acceptable net profit, penciled in there, it's fine to win the job at that point. But if I've not done, really what I know I should do, what I've done is I've just put a whole bunch of back pressure because the margin percentage is not where it needs to be. The fixed expense ratio now will automatically go up to, I don't know what that would be, which is scary. Nurturing the profit is not going to happen, okay? And then all of a sudden we come back and go, oh, my business is shit. No, you know what it is? It's we haven't qualified the different leads properly as they've come in. So not every project deserves your estimating time. I think that in this day and age of AI, and everyone's talking about it and using it now, you know, it's the quickest way for me to qualify somebody. Rather than me even sit back and, well, my historical data and my experience, and I think this number's, you know, this is what I think your bedroom or your bathroom or your kitchen or your addition or, you know, whatever the case is going to cost. I can do the math. The minute that inquiry comes in, I can grab that, you know, if they've put a fairly decent amount of information, or I've then followed it up with a quick phone call, got more understanding, more context, and I can put that into AI, you know, I can really get either confirmation that that's what I thought it would cost, or I'll be like, okay, I was a little bit over, or I'm actually surprised because that's a lot more than what I thought. Then it allows me to go to, if I like the person, like the job, and they're willing to talk about money, I've got to get to the money part ASAP. Hey, Mr. and Mrs. Homeowner, I've done some research. It looks like that your main floor renovation, non-structural, is going to cost you 100 grand. How do you feel about that? Oh, Max, that's more than what we expected to pay. Okay, what was your expectation? Oh, we thought 70. All right, well, we're either going to fix this $30,000 differential, or we're not going to do any business. See, I don't want to estimate for everyone, but I don't want to burn people at the stake because they come to me. They have no idea. They don't understand what a build cost is. Why would I even give their opinion of what they think it's going to cost any kind of daylight? Okay, so it doesn't deserve. And this is the thing when you move into pre-construction. I sent out a letter of engagement on the weekend, Saturday. And I've got a client that's in Vancouver Airport today who's going to be back in our neck of the woods in the next day or two. And he will get the same letter of engagement. It just talks about how, you know, what the costs are, projections for interior designers, architects, and for me to oversee the whole design, plan and price process. Okay, I've got an hourly rate that goes with that. I log that on my daily logs and I bill for that monthly. If you want to know more about that, yeah, maybe hit me up on email or grab a time with me. We'll do a complimentary coaching session. You can get some notes out of that. Okay, poorly qualified leads erode margin before the job even starts. Yeah, chemistry is a big deal. Trust is a bigger deal. So if you've got good chemistry with a client, doesn't mean you're going to enjoy the process. What we need to have is trust. And there's times in my career where I'm being an absolute Nazi as it relates to change orders. And as the job progresses, you know, I'm not condoning that you do work without getting paperwork. Please don't do that. Okay? Get a change order proposal approved, issue the change order, the signed version of the change order along with an invoice, get your money for the change order before you order anything, move ahead. But for those of us that are a little bit, I guess their intuition is a little bit more on point, and they, you know, and let me say this straight up, even though Mr. I've got intuition is on point, you still run the risk it's 50-50 whether you get screwed at the highest level or the lowest level. But at the end of the day, if you've not got something in writing, what's the deal? Doesn't exist. Okay. So that's where, you know, it doesn't matter really whether you're on fixed price or whether you're on cost plus. If you don't get paid, you know, half of your last payment or what have you, and you've got to fight it with lawyers, it's just going to end all bad. Bad. So you just got to make sure that you are doing what you feel you are able to handle if the consequences are or the outcome is negative. Okay, like they say, don't invest money you're not prepared to lose. Right. So if I'm going to stand here and say, well, my intuition says that I should probably get change orders for this list of 10 items. If I'm going to stand here and get that change order for those list of items at $10,000 a piece, and I'm not going to get a signed change order, I'm just going to run the gauntlet at the end, what's the chances of me getting that 100 grand? So don't invest what you don't not prepared or not able to lose, because that's what can happen. So best practice is to change order proposal or proposal for a change order. The change order gets approved, the invoice gets submitted, the invoice gets paid, then you place the order. Copy? A strong qualification system protects the profit before the contracts are signed. And so this is why, if you've got $1 million job, okay, and it's got a 10% net profit, and we're talking 100K, this is where what you've done is, if you've got a qualification system where you know that you like the client, you like the job, and they talked about money and all this sort of stuff, got going pretty well. And what you've nailed down is what your net profit is to start with. This is why if you have a 10% net of 100 grand and there's 10 10 change orders or variations for $10,000 a piece that you go and do without getting the proper signing authority or the authorization, you can erode that dollar amount. Now, what I've seen up front is whenever the client has been very generous in writing those deposit checks, and they've been fairly casual, if you like, or jovial about cutting checks, that's a bit of an indication on what their focus is. So that's where if they're a little bit tight up front, I'll be watching that. And I won't move, because I know they're a little bit skitsy when it comes to writing checks. So, but you just got to make sure that when you're qualifying your clients, you're on the lookout for those sorts of things as well. Now, this is all cute, right? So when we talk about not every project deserves your estimating time, poorly qualified leads erode your margins, and then a strong qualification system protects your profit, you got to ask yourself the question, in designing your sales qualification system, what are you qualifying for, and how are you qualifying? And so those two things you've got to really just think about, because your qualifying system guaranteed will be different to mine. I'm a different personality, so I can handle different things differently to you perhaps, okay? If I'm longer in the tooth and I've been around a lot longer than you, building and selling and all that sort of stuff, and you're brand new, mid-20s, then maybe your qualification system is going to be a little bit more open and free-ranging, whereas for me, I'm very targeted, very specific nowadays. Matter of fact, I think the larger contracts that we've had, which will equal over $2 million, 3 business owners, okay? Smaller contracts, employee, employee, employee. So that's, when someone says to me, I run my own business, part of my qualification system says, right, this is starting to move into my wheelhouse. If I figure out somebody is working a day job, not every time, but what I've found in the last 3 or 4 contracts that are small jobs, they've been employed people, okay? So you've got to work out what you qualify, and then what style of job are you quoting for? See, I run it now where someone rings me and says, oh, Max, and I've got 2 right now that are around the $10,000 mark. And we're just doing them on cost plus. I'm like, let's go. And I'll get decisions on those in the next 24, 48 hours. But they're a service product, because I don't know who they know who might want a $500,000 reno. And that's why I do it. But money loves speed. So I'm not going to sit down and do an itemized quote to do a fixed price for a $9,000 job. That's not how I roll. People know, oh, this job might be too small for you. And I'm like, Mr. Homeowner, no problem. We've got the team to do it. We'll get in, we'll get out. I know you'll be happy, okay? But I'm not doing fixed price, because I'm not going to sit there and quote it for 2 hours, because there's too many anomalies and too many unknowns. If you want it done, ready to go. And that's where your social or digital reputation kicks in. The client's going to go away and say, well, he's everywhere on the internet. He's got 20 plus reviews, video testimonials. He's got 20 something, 4.9 star review thing on Google. Like they're just going to go, okay, we'll have to trust. Okay. And so if people can get to a point and reconcile in themselves that this person is worth trusting, they're actually more excited about getting the job done at the end of the day. Okay. So what are you qualifying? In other words, what's your client avatar? How are you qualifying those? Well, I just showed you. Do I like the person? This is an initial qualifier. Do I like the person? Do I like the job? And they're willing to talk about money. Okay, that's how I'm qualifying. Then we go the next step. Right, you're going to pay, I need a deposit for my architect, I need a deposit for my interior designer, I need a deposit for me, I'm going to charge you an hourly rate to oversee the design plan and price process, bill you monthly, here's my letter of engagement, give me a check for 10 grand. See, that will flush them out quick. So that's where I go to the next level of qualification. It's like, I need commitment. You're asking me to commit to you and your project. Well, I need some commitment from you. Okay. If you don't know your numbers will eventually control you. So here's where we're gonna close it out. Control or be controlled. Now, if you go, oh, how does your business control you? Well, if you've got creditors and you've got suppliers and you've got subcontractors ringing you and you can't pay, your electricity bill at home, that's called being controlled. That's called the tail wagging the dog. And I've lived there before. I'm with you. Like, no problems. I get it. It's shit and it's hard. But I'm telling you that if you want to be in control, because remember, when you have got all of that shit going on and people are demanding payment, all this kind of riffraff, that is where you've got a business that is out of control, where you, because of the lack of order or the disorder in your life, you've got chaos. Okay, we've talked about this before. What your goal is to get out of that pit or that valley of chaos and just get into that zone where there's control. Okay, because that's where lifestyle lives. That's where profitability exists. And so, I think the urgency with me today or this morning as I was preparing was that this is a combat sport. All of you guys and gals have probably seen MMA and UFC and all that kind of stuff at some point. You've got some understanding, but this construction business that you're so in love with, it's a combat sport. You're going to go in there and you're going to cop a smack in the mouth. You will get a cut over your eye, okay? You will cop one. It's just the way the game is played. And so if you can't handle the pressure, because I'm telling you, I've talked about this before, whenever you're trying to expand or grow a business, there's stress. Whenever you're stagnating or your business is in a stagnation flatline mode, there's stress there as well, because you don't know whether you're coming or going. And certainly if the business is sliding backwards, or is in decline, there is stress there as well. So I think if you're going to be in a world of, let's call it hurt, and you're going to be stressed, well, why not be growing the business? And that just talks about, really you growing yourself. So if you want to live in the land of control, then you need to bring order to your business. You've got to be systemized in the way that you do business. And really, folks, to finish up, this is just part of a bigger system. It's part of the bigger wheel. Understand how to price jobs, understand what your your costs are to run the business, understand how you qualify clients to weed out to move the dirt to find the gold. Okay, and really understand what does a successful business look like in the way of net profit. So get across elitebusinessadvisory.com. Get into that academy, guys and girls. If you're sitting there going, I'm serious about running a business, right? And you're not willing to invest something in yourself, then I'm telling you right now, your trade school is not taught you what you need to know. And if you can't go back and watch 280 or whatever it is of my podcast and confirm that, then this business of construction is going to be too much for you. You're not going to get it. You need to be a student of the business. And you can tell by my tone right now, because I've had a gutful of trying to impress people. I'm done. It's like, I'm telling you, I will tickle your ears. You will go out there and you will be punching above your weight. You don't understand the gravity of the situation. You think that this thing you're entitled to success when you are not. And then all of a sudden, you come back and go, oh, I couldn't run that business. So then what you do is piss off and start another business somewhere else. Like it's the business's fault. Mate, until you've read 50 books like I have, until you've sat in hours and hours of seminars, until you have had X amount of coaching, until you've been in the industry 30-something years like I have, then you might be able to make comment. But until such time, know that you are the challenge. You are the bottleneck. You are the pinch point. The speed of the leader determines the speed of the pack. Geez. Okay, let's finish up. That's enough. If nothing else, I've motivated you to educate yourself, to understand where you're lacking. There is absolutely blind spots all around you and you don't even know it. Okay? And so just be mindful that this is just a small part of the system. okay, that we need, and a small part of the character of the DNA of your business. So when I say, hey, to go and build a kick-ass business, right, your education, getting your head in the game is what I'm talking about first and foremost. Love you to bits, okay? Go and build a kick-ass business, educate yourself, know that there's always something to learn today that you didn't know yesterday, and know this, it is a combat sport. So go build a kick-ass business. See you in the next episode. Cheers.